Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by Reps, Virtual Reality, First Down Playbook, Rack Coach, Next Pick, Tip of the Spear, the Top Hopper, and Sports Workbook. Today, I have probably the most loved college recruiter in the history of the 804, probably in the history of Virginia, and that's Coach Jim Cavanaugh, who has coached at the only man that has ever coached at Maryland, Virginia, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and North Carolina State. Coach Cav, thank you for coming on. And for the people who are watching or that are going to watch that don't know who Jim Cavanaugh is, tell us a little bit about yourself, Coach, and where are you from, and how did you get down here to Virginia?
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction.
Thank you, Coach.
I can remember when I first met you in the various high schools. That's many. I'm talking about way back.
20 years ago, Coach.
Oh, it's a long time. No, I went to William and Mary I went there under Coach Levy. I played on Long Island in a Catholic league that had 8 high schools around the New York City area. They were predominantly at that time all boys schools, and our school had somewhere between 1,700, 1,800 boys. They were all pretty much big schools. And William and Mary used to recruit that area heavily. And so I got a chance to be recruited by them, by Coach Levy and his staff. And I went down to visit, and it was a great place. And what was funny, I flew down with 4 other guys in the New Jersey. This league went into Jersey, and we all had played against each other on different times, different years. And then when I got to William Mary for the official visit, my host was a guy named Ted Zykowski, a very good friend. We're still friends. And Ted was a big tight end from Brooklyn Tech. And we used to scrimmage them all the time. Because, when I was in high school, New York State had a rule you only could play 8 games.
Mm-hmm.
So my head coach, Mr. Joe Thomas, who was sort of a legend up there, great man, a really great man.
Is that Coach Al Groves, Coach?
Yes. Al went to the same high school as I did.
Wow. Did y'all play on the same team, Coach?
No. When Al was a 12th grader, a senior, I was in 8th grade in middle school.
And they won the state championship.
They called it junior high. His senior year at Chaminade was recently honored as the best high school football team to come out of Chaminade.
Mm-hmm.
They went 8-0, and that was quite an accomplishment to go undefeated in that league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Al. In fact, I got an award last summer from the league, that Catholic league, and Al actually introduced me.
Wow.
So no, I've known Al, and I knew Al. We competed against each other as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he was the head coach there at Virginia for all those years when I was an assistant at Tech. And I got to know his son, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he's from the same school.
And he was on the podcast. Yeah, he was on the podcast, Coach. We did 2 hours, and he talked about Coach Thomas, and he loved Coach Thomas.
Yeah, it was Coach Thomas. To me, I'll be honest with you, I never called him Coach Thomas. I called him Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Thomas, okay.
Yeah, he was a straight-laced. He was from Pittsburgh. He went to Northern Catholic High School in Pittsburgh. which was the same order of brothers. The brothers of, they're called, our teachers were Marianists, and they were brothers of Mary. So they, Coach went to high school at the same type of order of brothers and priests as Chaminade was.
Yeah, Coach. I want to ask you about you and Coach Groh. I mean, were y'all the only two coaches that he had? Because I mean, that's an NFL head coach.
No.
I mean,
There's been.
That's impressive, Coach.
Yeah, there's been a lot of coaches. Now, most of them, the coaches out of Chaminade that I know, were all remained in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember now, Nassau County, where we were located, is a huge. It's one of the biggest counties in the country,
mm-hmm.
and many of the people that I went to high school with are still in that area. Very few went away to school. A lot of them went to the Catholic colleges in the Northeast, Villanova, Boston College, and Siena, and all these different schools. And so they all came back and worked in the city or taught on Long Island. So it was good. I saw some of these guys last June when I went up there for this affair. But he's actually living in Boston now, and he took the train down to the ceremony, banquet, whatever you want to call it. It was held in New York City, and so he took a direct train down, which was pretty unique. It was good to see some of these guys, because when I left, no one in my family had ever left a area of about 10 miles. We were all lived in the same area, all my cousins and all that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went all the way down to William and Mary, way down to the New York people. That's way down south. Now, Al went to Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
When he came out of school. Al actually played lacrosse also at UVA. But anyhow, when I got to William Mary, I played for Marv Levy, and that's how I got into the state of Virginia. Then I became my major was kinesiology, but also I had all these physical education courses that I did my student teaching in. And so I sort of had a dual major there. And so I could teach, I was certified to teach K through 12, mostly obviously PE, but also health, driver's ed, biology. William Mary prepared you well. And I started coaching. Jimmy Laycock and I shared an apartment, and we both coached at the old Newport News High School, the last year it existed. And we used to play Hampton every Turkey Day. And we had approximately 10,000 people on the last game, because they had court-ordered busing down there, and they changed all the schools, and they made Newport News a middle school. So I went to Denby, which was up the road. So and Jimmy went to Clemson as a grad assistant, and then I went to the following year, 1972. I went to NC State as a graduate assistant, because Lou Holtz went from William and Mary to NC State.
Let me ask you about Marv Levy and Coach Holtz. I mean, that's kind of rare to have two Hall of Fame coaches coach you, at William and Mary, which, would have been considered a small school at that time, I guess. But what was that like?
At that time, we actually played a 1A, the 1AA, 1A hadn't come in yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we played in the Southern Conference, and then we played Virginia Tech every year. We played Virginia, 1 year. We played Syracuse, Navy, Boston College, when I was there. So Vanderbilt, I remember going to Vanderbilt and playing. And so it was, I guess more people would have, we had like 3 or 4 of those games every year. And then you had only played 10 games back then. So, and then we were in the Southern Conference with Richmond and VMI. We played VMI every year. So, but Coach Levy was there for 3 years, and then he left. George Allen was the head coach of the Rams, and he made Coach Levy the first special teams coach in the NFL.
Mm.
And then George Allen went from the Rams to Washington, D.C. as the Redskins, and then Coach Levy went with him. And then Holtz, he had actually, we did not know this, Holtz actually had been an assistant at William Mary 1961, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew President Pascal. So they had just won the national championship at Ohio State.
Mm.
And that was his entree to come into to William and Mary. Now, they were very different personalities as far as coaches.
Yeah, talk about that, Coach. What was different about their personalities?
Well, Marv, Lou was very energetic. He was sort of, he was a young guy. I think he was 32, 33 years old. And he could bounce off the walls a little bit. And Marv was a very reserved guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to tell a story about Coach Levy. We used to joke about how many words on a Friday night talk before your game when you're all in a motel, hotel, whatever. And he would give a pregame talk about the opponent the next day and what we had to do. And we had a clique of about 5, 6 guys. I was the youngest. I was a sophomore. Excuse me. And we'd pitch in quarters, see how many words Marv would use that we wouldn't understand. He was quite a guy. And then when he went to the pros, the NFL films, that became real popular. They did a special on Marv. Marv, he knew the rules better than the officials. Mm. He was a genius when it came to the rules. And the one thing he could not stand was bad officiating.
Man,
you'd come over to the side, and he could get after those officials and use words that none of those officials probably knew what the hell he was talking about.
I got to study him, Coach, more.
Oh, Coach Levy was just an amazing fellow. And quite honestly, we have a lot of guys that from my era that got into coaching, high school and college and pro, and were influenced by Coach Levy, And to tell you how straight arrow he was, he would now you had a bunch of wild men coaching for him now.
Mm-hmm.
Those assistant coaches, they did a few drills I don't believe you would do anymore.
No.
But Coach, he was just an amazing, he had a way of relating, and you could understand what was going on. And he was such a straight shooter one year, my sophomore year, I caught a bunch of balls in a game, and I set a couple of records or whatever that are since been long broken. But I saw he had a bulletin board outside the football office in the gymnasium, and you had to sign in every day, so you could see the messages. If they didn't have cell phones and all that stuff, he only had a staff of 6 guys, so you had to go by the bulletin board. So if one of the coaches wanted you to, or him wanted to talk to you, they put the message on the bulletin board.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sign it in, you get it. And so I'm on the bulletin board, but I got to get to a class, so I can't see him for another hour or so. And because I just signed in because I'm on my way to class. And I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? Why does Coach Levy want to see me? Well, I walk in, I see the secretary, and the secretary said, yes, Coach Levy's waiting for you. So I go, he wasn't just waiting for me, whatever. He was doing his stuff. But anyhow, I go in and talk to him, and he says, Cav, I wanted to warn you, I did not recommend you for the Southern Conference Player of the Week because you're blocking as a tight end. I played wide receiver, but he'd bring you in, in certain formations, whatever. And so my blocking, I guess I had 10, 15 snaps at tight end in this one game, and then the rest were out wide. Well, he said your blocking was not up to par. I just felt I couldn't recommend you for player of the week for the conference, And I caught about 10 balls for a lot of yards, but I let out a deep sigh. Mm-hmm. And of course, he recognizes it. And he says, why are you, what? You look relieved. I said, I am relieved, Coach Levy. I said, when our names are on that bulletin board, they're never up there for good things. And I thought I did something wrong, and you were going to give me, you were going to chew me out.
Yeah.
And he sort of chuckled a little bit. For Marv, it was a laugh, but for us, it was just a little chuckle. And so I left. But he was a very polished, very.
Who did he learn from?
Coach Levy became a head coach. He played at Coe College, which is in Iowa. Then he went to Harvard for his master's.
Wow.
And then he coached he was the head coach at Cal Berkeley and New Mexico State. So he probably did he came to William and Mary, he was a young coach. So Marv became a head coach probably in his late 20s.
Yeah, he was an assistant at New Mexico. He's the head coach in New Mexico, then Cal, and then William and Mary. So yeah, Coach. I mean, heck, think about that, Coach. He left Cal to go to William and Mary.
Yeah,
it's almost hard to believe.
Well, part of it was too. I'm not so. I think both the school and him sort of parted ways. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think something happened out there. We didn't ask. We were just glad to have him. And anyhow, I went down there to visit, and there was a bunch of guys from the Northeast. We had players from Philly, Pittsburgh, the greater New York area, Boston, D.C., and of course we had some kids from Virginia. So we married in state school, and so they had to have X amount of students, from the state. But most of the football players, a lot of kids from New York and Jersey and Pennsylvania. Most of our team was made up from those 3 states. Then I would assume Virginia was probably next. So that's how I got down to the Middle Atlantic area, and then I coached in the Newport News school system, and then I went further south when Lou went to NC State. So that's how I sort of began this trip.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Mr. Thomas and Coach Levy were two. I guess nowadays you'd use the word mentor, but they were two guys that I, really respected. And then in Newport News, with Laycock and I there, we had a coach named Harlan Hott who passed away several years ago. And Harlan was Coach Hott was an excellent man to work for. So the first year we were in coaching, he had 4 new guys. We were all fresh out of school, and he let us coach. I actually coordinated the defense, and Jimmy coordinated the offense right out of school.
He's got a pretty good staff, really, Coach.
Yeah, well, we were young and dumb and didn't know any better, And now, like any other situation, I had on defense, and they played offense too. We had 2 of the best football players ever to come out of the peninsula area, JoJo Bethea and Willie Armstead. And you bring those names up now down, they were hellacious football players. They played basketball. JoJo played basketball at Anderson Junior College, and then he played basketball for Clemson University. And yet we upset Hampton down there on Turkey Day, and between Willie and JoJo, they had most of the tackles. Willie was a running back. He went to the University of Utah. So, and then we had guys like Phil Allen, Jimmy Swinton, a guy named Ruffin. We had really good players. And so it's that same combination. I mean, you have to have good players. That's a fact. I mean, good players make all these good schemes work out. I think sometimes, we lose sight of that sometimes in situations of coaches and stuff. It's a fact of life. And that's, I had the following year when I was a grad assistant in 1972 at NC State, under Holtz. And then he brought some of his William Mary coaches, and then he had some of the coaches from State. But the point I want to make is we had good players. We inherited good players from the previous staff, and then Coach Holtz put in a veer system, a split back veer, which fit the nature of the players we had. And so and we had a good quarterback. Our quarterback was all ACC, was from Richmond, a guy named Bruce Shaw. And so he was first team all ACC quarterback 1972. But my point being, we had good players, and we had a good amount go to the NFL. And that was the first year. People aren't aware of this now, but in 1972, it was the first year that freshmen could play varsity football in college. And that had a big umpit. We had a couple of young freshmen play for us. And so that helps you with depth. And we had a quarterback named Dave Bucky. So that was good. So
You got a couple comments. You got a couple comments here, Coach. J.C. Hall, who I know you know from Cortland. He said the Typhoons raw meat. That's just saying raw meat. George Major, who's from James Monroe. Good to hear, Cav. So everybody's just glad to hear your voice, Coach. Yeah.
Well, but you asked, that's got me started.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to when I got my first, I was at NC State for 2 years. And then another coach that I admired greatly was Bob Thalman, was the VMI coach. And I was at VMI 74, 5, and 6. We had a coach named Joe Bush, who was excellent. Unfortunately, Donnie White has passed away, but you guys in Richmond, Donnie left VMI and then as a coach, and then came back. Donnie was AD at VMI, and he had coached it up there in what's the school just north of the city there? I'm trying to remember.
Randolph-Macon?
No, he was at a high school. What's the high school right there by Randolph-Macon? I can't.
Patrick Henry?
That's it, Patrick Henry. I'm sorry.
J.C. Hall said Newport News High, home of Jimmy Hall.
Yeah, Jimmy Hall's his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Hall, I coach with Jimmy Hall. And Jimmy Hall is JC's dad.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Hall, great coach, character, good person. And he could coach him up. Now he was up in that area in where JC, I think JC's up in around Woodbridge in that area.
Yeah, Cortland.
Yeah, there you go. So, so going from NC State, then I was at VMI, and we were lucky in 1974. We won the Southern Conference. We beat East Carolina for the title, and we beat Virginia Tech. VMI did that year. And it was Jimmy Sharp's first year there. And so old Jimmy made up for it the next year. 1975, we played Virginia Tech. And, he ran the wishbone. He came from Alabama. And they beat us pretty good in Richmond in the Tobacco Bowl. And they did not throw a pass.
Wow. It's my type of game.
They ran the ball at us, and they made up for the year before when we, Sharp caught a lot of heat for losing to VMI, in 1974. So we, anyhow, he made up for it the next year. He took his tailback from 74, Rogers, and put him at quarterback. A very clever move.
Mm-hmm.
He ran the wishbone, and they did not throw a pass that afternoon. One thing about the game, it ended quickly. The game went fast. But Coach Thalman, I'll never forget, Coach Thalman would always go to midfield, shake the hand of the other coach, win, lose, or draw, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a gentleman. Now, people don't know, but Coach Thalman, he was a Marine. He fought in the South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
He was in that battle of Iwo Jima.
Wow.
Coach Thalman was quite a guy. And then he came back and graduated from Sydney. But he's from West Virginia, Coach Thalman. Great man. And he thought every game we played at VMI, when I was there, we were 15-17 for the 3 years. But those 32 games, he thought he was going to win every one. He had a great knack for finding the best in people and coaching. He made darn sure we coached them up. You know, I mean, and Bill Bush was in charge of our offense, and then we had, you know, Bobby Morrison, Jimmy Weatherford, Donnie White were all on defense. A guy named Shaw was there. So we had a really good staff there. And then Dick Harmison was on that staff. Dick Harmison now is in a assisted living home. He's 97 years old. Army was, he's down in Williamsburg. And Coach Levy has come back to William and Mary about every 2 or 3 years for homecoming.
Wow.
So he draws a big crowd. We all turn, you know, I coached all my life, so I didn't get to go back there much. But I have been able to go back several times here in the recent past year. But so am I doing what you want to hear?
Yeah, exactly, Coach. Exactly. So you're at VMI 3 years, and then where do you go next, Coach?
Well, then I went to NC State under Bo Ryan.
Okay.
Coach Holtz went to the New York Jets for,
Mm-hmm.
and Bo Ryan came in from Arkansas. And so I was with Bo, and I coached receivers. At VMI, I actually coached the running backs, quarterbacks, and receivers. I had the whole bunch there most of the time. But then State, and I had receivers, and that's where I first got my, in recruiting. It's probably that's the first time I went up against the big guys, so to speak. You know, people came I had Virginia. I had parts of Virginia. I had the Richmond area, and I had parts of Tidewater. And then I could spot it wherever I wanted to go. So I had a kid named Mike Quick that went to Fort Union, played for the Eagles in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Early.
He was a receiver.
Yes. Mike is also, he does radio now, I believe, for the Eagles. Great kid. He's from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Richmond County High School. But he was at Fort Union.
Yes, sir.
And Bill Dooley was at University of North Carolina at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is one of my stories. I'm going to start filling in with a couple of them.
Okay.
But Coach Dooley was at, as I said, was at North Carolina. And they had some ties to Mike at Fort Union, but I did too. I helped recruit and coach John Schumann. You know, he was an assistant at Fort Union.
Yeah, talk a little bit about Coach Schumann. I got to get him on here. He's one of the guys that I haven't gotten on, and I mean, he's coached more NFL players than anybody. So talk a little bit about John Schumann, how important he is to the game of football in Virginia.
Yeah, John has done a great job. He's no longer coaching. He's the AD up there now. Okay. And he knows every facet of that school. And he is, a lot of guys went through there for different reasons. Some were academic, some were maturity, some were for
discipline.
Well, yeah, and also for they hadn't played that much in high school, or they were in a wrong system.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't realize. You may have a quarterback that can throw the heck out of the ball, but he's at a high school that runs the ball all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So nowadays, these kids just switch schools.
Mm-hmm.
But in the old days, they didn't do that. And whether it was the legality of it, I'm not going to get into all that. But all I know is there's a lot of the portal unofficially exists in high school. in high school now too.
Mm-hmm.
John would take, late bloomers, and he'd have some good players that, needed some academic help, usually on the SAT. They needed to do better on the English side. Usually math is pretty cut and dry, but the English can be a sensitive area for some kids. So he did a good job of that, and he'd coach them up. Now you talk about, he was tough. He had a good staff, and John is one of these guys. You talk about straight hour and to the point. He can say in 10 words that it takes some people 50 words to say. I mean, he knows his stuff, and he knows. One thing I knew about John, if he recommended a kid football and academically and as a kid, you could take it to the bank. You didn't need to have any discussion. And so when Mike Quick, now John's just an assistant at this time. He's just getting out of VMI and that type of thing. So I'm recruiting Mike, and North Carolina. I mean, everybody was recruiting Mike. He was a 6'10" high jumper, 13.5 on the 120. That's when the high hurdles were 120, not 110. 120 highs. I think he ran 13.5, 6'10" high jumper. There wasn't anything. He was a hell of a basketball player. In fact, he played basketball up there too. So at 14, that's part of the story. So Mike is going to visit. I got Mike all set up on his visit, and and his mom, all she wanted was Mike to go to North Carolina or North Carolina State. She wanted him close. Okay. Well, I think I have them all set up for the first visit, his first visit at NC State, the middle of December. Okay. And we're first. So, you always like to be first or last. You can make a big impression on them. But if you're last, you better hope he gets to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Some of these kids, they may have 5 visits. Well, on visit number 3, they're tired of visiting. And then if you're number 4 or 5, they don't get to you. So you always like to be first and whatever. So we are, and see, with North Carolina in Chapel Hill and State in Raleigh, I mean, we knew each other's business. And you got to remember now, this is back in the days, you're too young for this. We used to have a conference letter of intent, okay? And that was the first Saturday at 12 o'clock in December, okay? So you had to sign, you could sign at 12:01 at lunchtime on that weekend. So most everybody wanted guys to visit that weekend, okay? And I had him set up to come that weekend. Well, he doesn't, they moved Carolina. There was some finagling going on, and Carolina got the week before, okay? And I'm sort of crushed because I'm thinking, oh, gosh, But I know he can't sign because, it's not signing day quite yet. But no, I'm wrong on that. I am a week off. That he went to North Carolina on signing date, and we were the next week. I had that backwards. So that's my mistake.
That's all right, Coach. That's okay.
Well, so anyhow, so he's there, So we're all worried. Well, whatever happened, his mother wasn't there. She didn't, So he has a scholarship, and he is, but he hasn't signed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we get wind of that, when I go visit up there that following week. I'm up there Monday morning, first thing. And I realize, okay, well, we dodged a bullet. Well, the Coach Dooley thought that the assistant coach that was recruiting Mike for North Carolina had driven down to Mike's home and got his mom to sign it. But he didn't do that. And that was our, so Mike comes to our place, and we have one of his former teammates there. And of course they hit it off. And Mike says, yeah. So we're, come down. He was home for vacation. So that following week, it was Tuesday. It was a Tuesday, because we told him, talk to your mom on Monday, work it all out. And we're going to come down Bo Ryan and I are going to come down Tuesday. And we come down there, and lo and behold, he signs with us. And Mom's right there, and Bo got to explain everything to Mom. We had to go to Mom's place of work, and all these rules have all changed since then.
Yes, sir.
But so we got both signatures, and it's the conference letter. So now he could sign it Notre Dame or Ohio State, but he can't sign it any ACC or SEC school. So Carolina's out of it. So we win. Well, Coach Dooley gets wind of it. They're down at the Liberty Bowl. They fly back on that Tuesday. They played the night before, Monday night. And we were getting ready to go down to 72. That was the Peach Bowl down in, not 72, 78 down there in Atlanta. So, so Mr. Coach Dooley, they turned me in to the ACC, saying that we pressured Mike to sign.
What are you supposed to do?
Well, no, we didn't pressure him. He did. There was no, and but it gets in it's on the evening news. My wife, we didn't have cell phones back then. And I call in, and she says, "You're on. They got your name, you and Bo, on the sports of TV about Mike Quick, saying he signed it at the state." I said, "Well, that's good to know." So anyhow, when they fly back from the Liberty Bowl, it's in the paper, and Coach Dooley, he's all upset and da-da-da-da. And then like I said, they turned us in, and one thing led to another, and nothing ever came of it. Because one thing that happened, Coach Dooley left Carolina and went to Virginia Tech, shortly thereafter. And the new coach, Coach Crum, came in, and he and Bo Ryan are best friends. So they didn't push it, or, they didn't try to fight the Mike Quick thing, And I'm not sure they knew the skill level. He had just come from Miami of Ohio to North Carolina, and Coach Dooley had a great recruiting class the year before, LT and all those guys. So I don't think he, they didn't make a fuss over Mike, and turned out he was a heck of he's the only freshman I ever coached that started as a freshman.
Wow.
A true freshman. Now, he had been to Fort Union, so he did have a year there.
Yeah.
but he was a heck of a player and a heck of a guy. He was a great guy. But then from there, Bo went to LSU, and I had left the year before and gone to Marshall.
I didn't know that you were at Marshall, Coach.
Yeah, I was at Marshall when Sonny Randall was there for 2 years. And then from there, I went to Virginia. I was actually on Coach Bestwick's last staff at Virginia. And with Coach Dave Brain, and a guy named Dick Lage, who was a heck of a coach at Richmond for so many years. And then Bobby Ross, the next coach I want to talk about, Bobby got the Maryland job. He was coaching for Coach Levy at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby got the Maryland job, and he hired me then from Virginia. So, and then I spent 6 years with him. So Bobby Ross, and you have to be careful. You have as many years. I've had 41 in college and 47 altogether. You run a gamut of people, personalities, coaches, and I think we all have to be, as we get older. I'm 75 now. As you get older, different people had impressions on you at different times in their life and your life.
Mm-hmm.
And some are more kind of like Coach Thomas and Mr. Thomas and Coach Levy. And then Bobby was a big influence on me, my coaching, in that he was a really honest guy, very detailed. Now, he spent most of his time, I was on offense still at that time. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'd be remiss. Ryan, I didn't go into it, but Coach Ryan got killed in a plane crash.
Wow, Coach. When was that?
When he went to LSU in he was killed. He was killed in January of 1980.
Wow.
He had just gotten the job, and he was in a small plane. And now Bo Ryan, if he had lived, he might have been one of the great. Bo Ryan was a phenomenal young coach.
I need to learn more about him, Coach.
You need to read up on Bo. He played at Ohio State for Woody Hayes. He played at the Big Ten, and he was on the taxi squad, I guess, for the Colts at one time. He was a skill guy, punt returner, running back, receiver, all that. And then, but for a young guy, he had a effervescent personality. Bo, at a young age, could do everything. He was a great coach. He saw things. He was a great recruiter, good personality, good guy. I mean, just a good guy.
He's a total package.
Yeah, except for one thing. He was a little disorganized. He had things like he didn't, he'd say, let's go to lunch. He said, I'll take you guys to lunch. And we'd go to lunch. Well, we get out to his car. He didn't have his car keys, all right? So one of us had to drive, okay?
Oh, man.
So we go to one of the local places, this is in the off season now.
Yeah.
And we go, and because we would be on the training table during the season. So we go somewhere and a sandwich shop or whatever. We get in there, Chuck Amato, Daryl Moody, myself, and
I tried to get Chuck Amato on, Coach. I'm gonna have to call him.
There's one problem. Chuck has had throat cancer.
Okay, Coach. Yeah, that's gonna be tough.
He really can't. Yeah, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your stuff.
Nah, Coach. Because I texted him because I know a guy that played for him or coached for him at FSU, and he never got back to me. But that makes sense now, Coach.
Yeah, he doesn't do. Peggy is his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and
but I loved him. So Bill Cowher played for y'all.
Yes, Carroll played for us at NC State.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I'd see Cowher. Last time I saw Cowher, he came by at Virginia Tech,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the head coach of the Steelers. And he came in there and he gave some of the coaches. He was on defense.
Yeah.
And I was on offense. So he was telling everybody there how the defense carried NC State at that time. The offense.
Yeah. Y'all were pretty good on defense, I think.
Oh yeah, but he was busting my chops,
Yes.
Myself and another guy. Back to Bo. Bo, we're at the diner and it's time to pay. Bo doesn't even have his wallet.
Yeah, so he's like ADD, Coach. I mean, he's like what you would say is like today would be like ADD, attention deficit disorder. I mean, he's like, he's a multi.
But I tell you this, as soon as his coaching now, he saw things. He was excellent.
Yes.
And he let you coach, I brought him back up because Bo had a real good Bo.
I'm glad that you brought him up, Coach, because I didn't even know who you were talking about. I've never even heard of him.
Yeah, he was excellent. And then, as I said, Coach Ross, who you know very well.
Yes.
Bobby is he's the salt of the earth guy. He was a straight arrow. He did everything, the right way. And now he was very methodical, and just very, very professional. He's a good man. He coached under Coach Levy all in college and pro, so I'm sure some of that rubbed off. He's another VMI, and there's something in the water about those VMI guys. Joe Bush, Donnie White, Coach Stallman, coach there.
Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin played at William & Mary, but coached at VMI.
Yeah. So all these, there's a special kid there. And so, Bobby's from Benedictine.
Mm-hmm.
So, just a class act. But there is as I like to tell a funny story on all these. Bobby, it's funny. We're at we had that great upset win against Miami in '84. We were down 31-0 at halftime.
Frank Reich.
That's exactly right. He's now the local coach here of the Panthers.
Wow.
Well, Frank had started the season, got hurt. So we had a kid named Gelbaugh in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Gelbaugh's in there. And it's 31-0 at halftime. Miami's like 6 in the country. And we're like maybe 15 or 16, somewhere in there. We're pretty good too, And so, and there was a non-conference game because at that time we were in the ACC. We actually won the ACC that year, '84. But so anyhow, it's 31-0, and we go into the locker room, and Bobby is very methodical. Didn't lose his temper, didn't get upset, come hollering. He didn't raise his voice, okay? He comes in there, and we got on the blackboard. My job, I was in the press box, and I listed, my job was to talk to Ralph Friedgen.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He was the offensive coordinator, but Joe Krivak, who later became the head coach there, Joe called the plays.
Mm-hmm.
But I would communicate. Joe's sitting next to me in the press box calling the plays, and I'm relaying information to Ralph, And then I would come down 4 or 5 minutes before halftime and put all this stuff on the blackboard,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So when we met with the offense, we divided our locker room, and offense one half, defense the other. And I'd have 1st and 10. Then I had 2nd and long, 2nd and medium, 2nd and short. Same thing for 3rd and 4th down if it applied. And then I had red zone. And I had the defenses and the coverage to see if we could develop any pattern, which we usually did. So Bobby comes in, and he's very methodical, okay? And then he just comes in and says, Stan, you're out, Frank, you're in. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. We make our adjustments, away we go, okay? And we come back, we score 6 straight times. Now, we are lucky. We get one of those touchdowns was the gift. Their defensive back jumped up. We're first in, they kicked the ball in the end zone. So we're 1st and 10 on our 20. And they kick it, or they've kicked it. We get it there, middle of the field. We run a post route to our flanker, and their free safety, they're playing man free. Their free safety jumps up and missed the ball. He tips the ball, okay? And the ball was short. So the ball goes behind the guy, and our receiver, who's behind him, wide open, he catches the rebound and goes 80.
Mm.
So we had just scored. Then we come back. We hold them in 3 downs. They, they punted into the end zone, not kickoff. They punted. We hit it. So we scored in like 30 seconds. We got 14 points. Okay?
Mm.
So anyhow, we win the game. And everybody goes nuts. But all our fans back in Maryland, most of them turned the game off because it was 42-40, I think was the final. They turned it off because we were down 31-0 at halftime.
Mm.
So the same scenario happens in the bowl game. We're playing Tennessee, and I guess it was I'm trying to remember which bowl it was. I believe it was the Gator Bowl. But we're playing Tennessee in a bowl game. And they're beating – no, it was the Sun Bowl. The Sun Bowl down in Texas. They're beating – I think it's 21-0 at halftime. And we stink. It's not like the Maryland-Miami game. We just weren't playing very well. And, it was in El Paso. So he comes in, and he's raising all – they used to put all the Gatorade drinks, when the players come in. Well, he airplanes all the drinks, and he knocks them all down. He knocks them all down. And I don't blame him. I'd have done the same thing. Well, what happens, Bobby, we have the blackboard, and I've got all this stuff on the blackboard.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby, you have to know Coach Ross. He is a competitor. He's the best, And so Bobby's all fired up. He's ready to go. Okay. Well, he's finishing up all the stuff, and you can see him getting emotional, ready to go. All right. Well, he hits the blackboard. Okay. Well, the blackboard that I had on that he hits, back at Maryland, our locker room blackboard was one of those on wheels that moved around,
Mm-hmm.
The blackboard in the Sun Bowl on the wall, okay, is attached to a cement wall.
Yeah.
So when he hits it, he smashes his hand.
Mm.
His knuckles are all ripped up. It didn't stop him. And he goes, he reacts, obviously. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He sort of bends over and whatever. And then he goes on, and we go out and win the game 27-21. And It was another great, comeback. And of course, and Frank was the quarterback for the whole game. But now there's a class act too, Coach Frank Wright.
Oh, yeah.
Bobby is, he was so good in the homes, with the parents. He was just a handshake. He was another guy like Coach Stallman. A handshake, you didn't need it in writing. If Bobby Ross told you something, you could take it to the bank.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about when you're charting what the defense is doing, Coach. I mean, you got some pretty good coaches down there that they got their opinion of what's going on too, but how do you do it? Is it just experience? Are you going from the back to the front or the front to the back?
I'm on offense now.
Yeah, so you chart.
I'm charting the other team's defense.
Yes, sir.
All right. And so if Ralph was our offensive line coach.
Mm-hmm.
So and when we practiced during the week, I had running backs. He had offensive line. Okay. We practiced all their blitzes together. We practiced all the running game together. Okay. Things were a little bit different back there. We were more physical in practice probably than they are now.
Yeah.
And I understand, we never practiced in shorts and shoulder pads. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We were always full gear. Now on Thursdays, after the, maybe midpoint of the year, we would take the lowers off. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
But we practiced pretty full go. And we had a blitz pickup. We went 10 minutes every day of what was called blitz pickup. And we had the defense, their front seven, do every blitz they had. And we made sure made sure our first team and second team, offensive linemen and backs, could know who to block.
Mm-hmm.
And we just drilled it into their head. Now, our two-a-days these were old-timey two-a-days. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I remember I did 3 days. I remember, Coach.
We went full gear for 3 weeks, both practices.
Yeah, that is old school.
Yeah. Us coaches were exhausted.
Oh, I remember, man.
As much as the players. That's the first. At Maryland, our trainer was really smart. He's the first trainer. We used to we put our players, we had the rubber garbage cans. We filled them up with water and let our linemen go in them one at a time.
Yeah, the cold tub. Mm-hmm.
We had we didn't have a big tub. We had all these individual ones, by position. And let them, cool off. And it really brought, I did it as a coach. I mean, I used to jump when during two-a-days, I'd be in the cold tubs right with the players. I'd skip meals to go, because usually you had your meal and then you went back to a coach's meeting. Well, I would go in the cold tub just to, it revived me. I bet it put 3 or 4 years on my coaching career.
Wow.
I mean,
that's good advice.
Huh?
That's good advice.
Yeah, but we schemed it up now. Now, don't forget this is the 80s. We didn't play run and shoot football like they do now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, now the game is played in space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your checker against their checker. Because everybody's spreading out with these offenses, okay, they're trying to get the defense on all these one-on-one situations, and nowadays, because they don't practice, I know when I was at Tech, those 15, 17 years at Tech, I was on defense at Tech. Well, we practiced tackling some part of practice there was live tackling. Okay. And so nowadays that's a lost art. Tackling in space is a lost art. Now, what we tried to do, we tried to set up drills so we didn't get anybody hurt. Like when we did that pass pickup stuff with our offensive line at Maryland, there was no cut blocking. Everything was up. Because we found out that offensive linemen would get hurt when offensive backs went low. So we blocked everybody. Now we had to have a physical kid. We didn't play with 175-pound tailback. So we had 200-pounders there, so they could pass protect. And because we threw the ball as much as we ran it back then. But we were about 50-50. And so we practiced it. And but this, this wear and tear, we would have 2 days was like gut check, And then the NCAA came in with all their rules, and they changed it,
Yeah.
And you can't do certain things now. I'm not as familiar with the rules as I was back then. But,
yes, sir.
But I do know that they can't have two full pad practices in a row.
Y'all had 3 weeks. Y'all had 3 weeks in a row. So basically, by down and distance,
now we gave Sunday off.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah. Well, that was good, Coach. I'm glad y'all gave them that off. The coaches were in the office, but so basically, were they doing what y'all practiced? And you just wrote it down. Hey, they're doing this because this is what they've shown on film.
Yeah, if they had a new blitz, I would tell Ralph would draw it up down on the field. If they did something we weren't prepared for, we drew it up as quick as we could get it.
Yeah, because y'all were already ready. You already knew what they were going to do by down and distance. So it was pretty much.
We had down and distance. Now we had computer printouts, so we could make our stuff. And then when I went to defense with Bud did all. We did all our game planning off the computer. What the tendencies were. And then both sides are trying to dissect the other, so to speak. Good
teams have tendencies. So, I mean, I guess if you're bad, you got to have something you hang your hat on.
That's exactly that is the statement we actually use,
Yeah, I learned it from Coach Mountjoy. Good teams have tendencies, Troy. Bad teams don't.
Yeah. Because they're going to gimmick you. They're going to try to do, if they think you have them out personneled, they're going to try to do, but those gimmicks don't usually work. Now you have to do a different wrinkles. I've found over the years, everything is protecting gaps. There's so many gaps on the defense. Okay. There's, people play a 5-2, they play a 4-3, they play a 3-4 personnel. Now everybody's running 10 personnel, 4 wides, no tight end, a back and a back, one back and a quarterback.
Yeah.
And now they'll take that tight end now and they'll motion him into the backfield and use him as a fullback. But when they do that, that's a tendency. They're usually going to do this and this. And so we try to school our guys up on those tendencies.
I was going to ask you about, you told me off the air about Bobby Ross being a former running back coach. And what advice can you give the young coaches out there that are going to coach the same position that the head coach coaches?
Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. Do it their way.
No. Of course, Coach had a certain way of what he wanted done. All head coaches have a way of wanting things done. And so when what was so far, I'm joking when I say keep your mouth shut. I hope you realize that.
Yeah.
What I was getting at was when Bobby would watch film on offense, the first position he would critique would be the two runners.
Mm-hmm.
We were a two-back team. So it got to be a little bit as we were together 5 years. The year 4 and year 5, it was sort of, I sort of knew what was, your personnel good enough. And I was fortunate. I had 4 backs that 3 of the 4 played in the NFL. And the 4th one got a shot at it. So, I had good backs there. And, but I was particular. Bobby was, he was very, you had entrance, you had, I called them entrance points, where let's say you were running off tackle.
Mm-hmm.
The outside hip of the tackle, you wanted to hit that at a certain angle. And then if it was an inside veer, you had a certain angle out, all that type of thing.
Yes, sir.
And what you did, you ran off the colors, I used to call it. In other words, if you're an offensive back, you count on your linemen blocking who they're responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't block them all. So you get to your landmark, okay, let's say it was the outside leg of the tackle. You get to that, as you're approaching that landmark, okay, and that they're going to double team that guy, kick out the end, okay, you hit that spot. Now, if that linebacker, they may not get to him, they may not be able to zone up to him, so he's going to be unblocked. Well, if you can beat most backs as they're going towards that position, they see the block made. They also read the linebacker running over the top. Well, they'll cut back under that block. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
They'll just do it smoothly. But that takes some, you got to rep that. They're just not going to do that on day one. Now, I've had one kid on day one, the old boy, I didn't have to coach him up a lick on the running back stuff because he had a gift.
Mm-hmm.
But and I asked him one time, I'll never forget it. He said, he said, Coach, I'm doing what you told me. I'm just running off the colors. We had some pretty good offensive linemen in Marv, but I never forgot him, saying that. And then I used it, His name was Willie Joyner. He was a heck of a back. But, you just run off the colors and that type of thing. So the veer stuff, even the veers, now when these people are running that one back veer, it's even more so than back in 2 back and 1 back, There's a lot. You see guys cut all the way back behind the backside tackle pinching down.
Yeah, run to daylight. That's what Coach Vince Lombardi said. And that was back like in the 60s.
Yeah. But there was a lot more daylight with his guys blocking.
Oh, yeah.
But in all seriousness, yeah, you just, and Coach Ross, as you went along, he had all these good tidbits that, that you incorporated in you. Good coaches listen. You listen for phrases to describe things.
Mm-hmm.
What the players, because you're only as good as those players, So don't try to coach them up too much. Give them the entry landmark, and obviously they have to know the front and that type of thing. And then the good ones will find that daylight. But if you have an abstract guy running back there, you better have two back. You better put another back in the backfield to block for him.
Yeah.
But then that affects the defense. They know you only got two wides, and they're going to come up and play you a little different too. So, but that's the advice I'd tell them. I mean, listen to some of these guys, some of the head coaches in high school probably haven't coached running backs. So sometimes it's not a bad idea if you got a young running back coach if he tries to go see one of the running back coaches in the state. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. So how long were you with Bobby Ross? For 5 years, and then what happened, Coach, with that?
I stayed. Bobby went to Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Coach Krivak, the quarterback coach, came in. And he made me offensive coordinator. Now, I went down to visit Georgia Tech when Bobby went there. Okay. And I decided to stay at Maryland. I'd been moving around, and it had nothing to do with Ralph or Coach Ross. It was me.
Mm-hmm.
I liked coaching in Maryland, and I had moved around early in my career, and I just didn't want to do that again.
Yes, sir.
But what was crazy is I only stayed there 1 year under Joe because the Len Bias situation occurred. And we had a hard time recruiting at Maryland because everybody labeled us a city school.
Yeah, which is bad publicity. It was bad PR. It was just a bad situation. I mean, yes. It cost the Celtics their franchise for 10 years at least, maybe more.
Yeah, and it happened. And Bobby, it happened, when Bobby was before Bobby's last year.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it probably affected him. And but I chose to stay because I just didn't want to. There was just too much. I had moved around so much that I just wanted my wife and kids and me to be in one place for a while.
And you only got to stay there another year. Then what happened, Coach? Where'd you go?
I went to North Carolina, under Mac Brown.
Man, what a beautiful place.
Yeah, it was. But it was a little bit different because now my best friend one of my best friends, not the best. I don't have a bet. The one, Darryl Moody, he was on the staff, and he was my connection to Mac. I had never met Mac Brown. I did not know him.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there, and after the last year with Bobby, and then the year with Joe, it was just hard to get people to come in, like I was saying, and I didn't want to move again. And I had a loyalty to the players that I had. So, but I decided to stay, to leave, to go to Carolina because it had become an impossible, I thought, situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Carolina. We was there 8 years, and we started out. We didn't have many. It was the first couple of years were tough. And then we slowly built a really good program.
Yeah, Coach. I mean, what years was it that you were at UNC? Because I got a comment here from Coach Bald. But what years was it that you were at UNC?
88 to 95.
Okay, so Coach Bald here, he says, yeah, Coach.
Who Tony Ball from
No, Coach. It's Coach Bald. That's his nickname because he's got a bald head, but he's from St. Petersburg, Florida, Coach. He lives in $1 million home on the water, and he was a high school teammate with me. His name's Kyle Anderson, but his question's kind of alluding to what I'm getting ready to say. When you were at North Carolina, Coach, pretty much you were at North Carolina. I graduated from LC Bird in 1996, and I just remember North Carolina dominating the state of Virginia in recruiting. I remember.
Well, from your area, we got Corey Holiday, William Henderson.
Coach, his question is, who was the biggest recruit from the Richmond Chesterfield he recalls recruiting? So, I mean, Coach, you're answering his question. I mean, North Carolina, Corey Holiday, Boogie Henderson. I mean, Ronald Curry, did you recruit him, Coach? Who were the guys you recruited in North Carolina?
No, I did not recruit him for I was at
you were at Virginia Tech. Well, we'll get into that, Coach, the Ronald Curry deal. But who were the guys you recruited for North Carolina?
Well, there was Henderson, and from Richmond was I think it was just Henderson and
Corey Holiday.
Yeah, and then Mike Geeter. There was a running back from Yorktown, Arlington, outside of
DC.
Yeah, and there was a quarterback from. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of where it was. There was a quarterback from Richmond that
a quarterback from Richmond that went to North Carolina?
Yes. He played for he was at Corey's school.
Oh, he's a Huguenot.
Yeah, he was at Huguenot. He was a good player, and I can't remember his name.
You recruited him to go to North Carolina, so they had two kids?
Yeah, he was who was the coach at
McPhee?
Huguenot?
Coach McPhee.
Yeah, McPhee had this young man, and he was a good guy. I really like. Was it DJ Coles?
Yeah, there was DJ Coles. Yes.
Yes, DJ was from there too, and he had the misfortune. He was a good player, a good kid, but he had the misfortune of being there with the other quarterbacks that we had.
Yeah, y'all had some good ones.
Yeah, we had Stanislav, Mike Thomas. So, yeah, it was sort of a.
Did you recruit Dre Bly?
No, I was gone. Let's see. No, I was still there at Carolina with Dre.
Yeah.
I get Dre mixed up with D'Angelo
Hall. Yeah. I mean, Dre Bly was from Western Branch.
Coach Browning recruited him. It was Coach Browning's first year on the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew Coach Johnson, Lewis Johnson, was
the coach. Yes, the wing T coach. He loved the wing T.
Yeah, that's right. I knew him, and I helped with him.
So what was so good about Coach Mack Brown, Coach? I know he went on to Texas to win the national championship, but is he?
He was a lot like. He was a great recruiter.
Yes.
He was he still is. He's very personable, and he has the facility. He has time for everybody.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
He's not rushed. Like if he visits your school, he's not going to say hi, bye, thank you, ma'am type thing. You know what I mean?
Yes. He's going to spend time with you and give you attention to make you feel special.
Yes.
And it's intentional.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he was always, one thing he did, like when we were talking about Henderson and Corey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tommy Thigpen's in that group too. He was from up 95, you know.
Yeah, he's there coaching now, isn't he?
He's there now, yeah.
I went and watched him in the spring. It's impressive. I don't know how anybody would not want to go there.
Tommy played. He started the first game as a true freshman of his career. He started every game for 4 years. That's hard to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, J.C. Hall says here, he says, Thigpen was from Potomac High School.
Yes, that's correct.
So when you went to UNC, were you coaching defense or offense, Coach?
I was coaching offense.
So still the receivers or the running backs?
No, I had receivers there.
Wow, you had some good receivers too at UNC, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Unfortunately, they got their Corey got hurt. So we redshirted Henderson, and then we played a kid named Yock. We played another Felton, a boy from Winston-Salem that was a hell of a player, Juice. And then there was one other guy. See, I'm showing my age here.
That's okay, Coach. That's okay. I mean, it's a lot to remember, Coach. It's a lot of names.
Well, it's when you go 47 years.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff runs together. But Julius was a heck. I'm embarrassed. I want to.
That's okay. If you think of it, Coach, say it. Were you there when the Freakazoid played defensive end, Coach?
Peppers?
Yes.
No.
So you were gone by the time Peppers got there.
That's correct.
Okay.
Julius
Reese. Yeah, it would come to you, Coach, eventually.
Reese, it was Reese, Felton, and Yock, and then Henderson. Holiday. They made up a core of really good receivers.
Natron Means, was he tailback?
Him and a guy named Johnson were the two tailback. Leon Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
We played them both.
I remember Natron Means was a bad chicken.
Yeah, he's down there now too.
Oh, is he coaching or is he?
He's coaching there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I wouldn't watch them practice. They got so many coaches now, Coach. There are people everywhere. I mean, there's somebody to hold a guy's water cup.
You have the, what do you call it? The consultants.
Yeah, analysts.
They must run into each other. I asked my buddy, how do you guys coach it? Because Daryl is down there, Moody is, and he's one of the those consultant types. And
I know, Coach. I know who he is because when I went to watch practice, I asked somebody. I said, "Who is that guy?" Because everybody kept going to him and talking to him, and they said he's a former NFL scout, and he's pretty much. I wanted to talk to him, Coach, because I was like, well, I need to talk to him because that was right after I came off of talking to Gene Chizik, Clyde Christensen, and the high school relations guy. I was like, well, who is he? And they said he's a former NFL scout, and he's pretty much here to tell guys this is what they're going to say.
Yeah, Daryl Moody is his name, and he and I were GAs together at NC State. We are best friends.
Wow, I got to talk to him, Coach. Whenever you get a chance, I have to talk to him because I found out in this thing. I mean, there's guys like Bob Sanders that I met, who was an assistant. There's a lot of assistant coaches who people don't know who they are, but they're the guys that make it go. They're the guys. There's the guys that recruit. There's the guys that coach. There's the guys that they don't call plays, but they're just great. Or, maybe they are a coordinator. I mean, so I'm going to ask you this. Who are some of the best guys that people don't know? Like you said, Bo Ryan. I never heard of him. Who else comes to mind when I say that, Coach? Who are some of the best guys that a lot of people don't know who they are? because they maybe never were a head coach.
Well, but Foster comes into that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
He's actually in that mold of people. See, it's hard to. One thing about that question there, Troy, is unless you're with unless you coach with somebody, you don't always.
You don't know. You don't know who the cog is that makes it go, I guess.
Well, you know on your team, you know the people you're associated with, but you may not know on the team you're playing against. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because for that, the anonymity that they have, quite really, like a lot of people, he got to be a head coach, thankfully, Ralph Friedgen. But Ralph Friedgen knew more football than any human being I knew, ever. He's the one guy I will say that about.
Man, I would love to. Is he still living, Coach? Is he still living?
Yeah.
I got to talk to him. Because if he
could coach both sides of the ball, he knew every position. Now, I mean, it's easy to know every position and what they do, but to coach them 365 days a year, he's the one guy I know that could call defenses, offense, and coach every position on the field. He's the only guy. I will make this. I will talk in absolutes here. He's the only guy I could say that could do that.
Why?
Now, I know
why is he, Coach? How did he become that?
He's very smart. He was a high school quarterback. He went to offensive guard when he played at Maryland, as an undergrad. And then when he got out of coaching, he coached as a young coach. He was forced into coaching both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
He coached defensive line. He's known best for offensive line, but that kept him from getting a head job. So when he went to Georgia Tech from Maryland with Bobby, like we talked about a little bit ago,
yes,
he went as the quarterback coach. He's the biggest quarterback coach in the country. I know. And then we had another guy in our Maryland staff who had coached out in the Southeast Conference. His name is Greg Williams. And Greg coached at Georgia. I mean, he's been an awesome coach, defensive back. He was at Maryland with us. And he played at NC State also. He in the 60s, late 60s. And Greg Williams is his name, defensive back coach. He's another one. He's excellent. He made the key defensive call when we won the game at Maryland versus Miami.
Wow.
He made a call. He knew the offensive coordinator. They had coached together, I guess, at West Virginia, and he knew him, or maybe not West Virginia.
For the Miami Hurricanes, who was the coach? Jimmy Johnson or
Johnson was the coach that year, and Gary Stevens was the offensive coordinator. And Gary, Williams knew what he,
what he was thinking,
and. We had been playing a lot of man, and they ran a pick play down on the goal line, 2-point play.
Yeah, 2-point pass, the 2 in, 1 out.
They ran a pick play, and we played zone.
And y'all sat on the flat route.
The number 2 guy ran into the flat, and our corner was right there and knocked it down. Yeah,
he knew. He knew what he liked.
We had played man leading up to that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Gary thought we were going to do that, and he knocked it down the corner. So pretty cool.
Yeah. So Mac Brown goes to Texas, right, Coach? And what all went down with that, Coach?
Well, I wasn't there then. So
okay.
Now I actually everybody knows this. So, but I actually was fired by Mac.
Well, I was about to say that wasn't a good move, but Coach, destiny you can't stop it. So
let's just let it be like it is.
Yeah.
When I get asked, leaving Carolina to go to Tech, I said, well, it was not my choice. I got fired. And part of that was a little bit of me in that certain things I sort of challenged. I didn't think they were the right thing to do. And so, I speak,
you speak your mind. You're a straight shooter.
I spoke my piece. He disagreed. And I went along and we did what he wanted. But I do know he didn't really want, how coach you can be. He didn't really want to hear it. And I should have probably shut up. But I made it was just it was a procedural thing we did. It wasn't any thing with personality. I mean, the kids or anything.
I mean, what did you learn from that? What can you tell the younger coaches out there?
Well, just make sure, sometimes you have to be careful. When you're an assistant, you are an assistant. And you have a head coach, and if you disagree vehemently about something, don't argue that point in front of everybody else. Go in, hey, coach, I need to see you. Shut the door behind you and speak your piece. Now, you may get the same result, but you haven't embarrassed the head coach.
Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
It's better, it's that old story, you catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar. You have to be smarter and not let your emotions dictate. And it's easy, that's easier said than done now. But
yes, sir.
And so be it. Mac and I, if I said this publicly, if I needed X amount of dollars to get me out of a jam or something, I could call Mac and we'd do fine with it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's not one thing. You learn. You don't carry. I mean, there are some people now. Not coaches, but there are some, that you just avoid.
Yeah.
And you don't say things, but you just avoid. And so you just need to do that. But no, so when I went to Tech, the thing about Tech that was so good, I always felt that I had a lot of contacts in Virginia.
Yeah.
I have a recruiting. I have my 10 commandments, so to speak. And one of the things is when I used to go around to the schools, the May recruiting, spring recruiting.
Yes, sir.
You'd hear, a lot of times coaches stayed in the same hotels and ate at Applebee's and you'd shoot the breeze, stuff like that. Well, I always found out that, these coaches would brag, well, I made it to 10 schools today, How many schools did you hit, Cav? And I'd say, well, I was at 5. I was at 4 yesterday. Boy, you mustn't. But see, I wouldn't run in and just run out. I'd see guys like you, when you were an assistant. I would see the AD or the assistant principal. I remember one time at Clover Hill when I was recruiting to Christopher, the big tackle. They had a lady principal. And
Dr. Marks.
Is that who she was?
Yeah, that's her name, Dr. Marks. She's from Hopewell.
Okay, well, she the next time I went to the building, she had found out from Salmon. He was the AD at the time.
Yeah, Ted Salmon.
Yeah, he must have told her that Coach Cav was by,
Mm-hmm.
And she said something like, "Well, he didn't come to see me." Well, I didn't go. I did go by, but she was in a meeting or busy, So I wasn't going to wait around. I went down, and then one thing led to another, and I just plumb forgot. I just didn't go back.
I mean, that's a huge secret right there, Coach. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of young guys that even think about that, but getting to know the AD, getting to know the principal at these schools.
Yeah, and after damn near 40 years, you pretty much know where all the bones are buried.
Mm.
You know all this stuff. You know who doesn't like who, and what brand of football they play, and I always try to get to know the assistants. You can't get to know everyone.
Yeah,
but I always try to have a little backlog because I wanted to be able to call. I've had some assistants call me and say, "Hey, Cav, can you call the principal at so-and-so or the AD at so-and-so?" I said, "Sure." And I know enough about you. I can tell them what's up. And
you're helping them, and then they're going to help you. And
and the help I need. See, people always. Some of my buddies, have been, I think, not misquoted, but been labeled a little bit, the wrong way. My point in doing all that, first of all, I like doing it. I'm not bashful. I like talking ball. I like recruiting. I like getting out of the office and seeing people. So when I'm in these schools, I mean, I've been a high school coach. I know how all this works. And so what I always tried to do in recruiting is I wanted two things. Number one, I wanted that they would not entice, but I would, if I really wanted a kid, I would tell the head coach or whoever around, I said, if you could help me, tell them the good things about tech and all this, because I just need the young men to visit. I don't need the help to get them to go there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't need for you to tell him you need to go to Virginia Tech.
Just get one of the five visits.
Wrong. I'm not going to turn that down. You know what I'm saying? But yes, see, it's never really five. They never get that far. It's usually three. That's more number than most.
Yeah.
Most of the time they visit, they get tired of it after a while, and then all the faces run together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you could say, hey, you need to visit Cavanaugh will shoot you straight, and that's all I need on that. You see what I mean? And then the second thing I always tried to find out. Now, it may not be the head coach that knows this, but somebody in that building knows who the kid is talking to. Who is the young man going to talk to when he makes his mind up? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Who's the decision maker? Who's the person?
No, you don't have to be. He's part of the decision himself. Yeah. But everybody has somebody they're going to talk to. Could be mom, could be dad, could be in some of the families where it might be single parent families. Mom works, there may be a divorce, so somebody's not in the home. Grandma's there to watch during the day, to be there. There's sometimes young assistants on the staff. The head coach may say, hey, make sure you drive so-and-so home, or look out for, so-and-so. Somebody is going to tell that young man something about some school.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I want that I don't care if the guy says you ought to visit North Carolina, Notre Dame, and Tech. You see what I'm saying? I don't care about the other.
As long as Tech is one of them.
I just want to be one of them. And I can do the rest from there. And I want to be able to make.
So what is the rest there? You said you could do the rest there. What?
That means the rest of the recruiting.
Yeah. What does that entail, Coach?
Well, it just means recruiting the young man, going to the school once a week like you're allowed.
Yes.
Bringing the head coach down, bringing the position coach down. If he plays another sport, I loved it when they played basketball because I could see that. Or play baseball. I'd go when I was in my May, I like it better baseball than track, but most of them ran track. Like Henderson, he ran track when he was a junior in high school. Me and Elmasian, I bet we saw every track meet he was in, And then he ripped his knee up his senior year.
Yeah.
A lot of people forget that.
And then he went on and played fullback for the Green Bay Packers and Brett Favre.
Yeah, for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
He played fullback for us.
Yeah, no. It was a heck of a get.
Yeah, he was and Corey, he started every game he played too. And now he was redshirted because he got hurt as a freshman. But those two turned out pretty fair.
So you go to Virginia Tech, Coach. I mean, is that immediately where Michael Vick, Ronald Curry battle is?
What happened? I went there in March of '96.
Okay.
And so
that was my senior year in high school.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. My senior year.
Well, I saw Mike when I was at North Carolina. I saw Mike play as a freshman
At Ferguson.
Yes, and he played. See, he played his freshman and sophomore years at Ferguson, and he played his junior and senior years at Warwick.
Because they consolidated, right?
Yeah, the Newport, what do you call it? The school, the college down there.
Christopher Newport.
Christopher Newport bought that building. They bought and so the Newport News School District sold it to them. So Tommy Riemann went from the Ferguson job to the Warwick job. But I actually saw Mike when he was in a Ferguson uniform.
And what did you think when you saw him for the first time, Coach?
I thought he was one of the best players I'd ever seen.
What was your point of reference? I mean, I
recruited there was a kid named Darnell Johnson from Highland Springs in the late 70s. Was a hell of a player. I signed for NC State, and then he ripped his knee up playing basketball in the summer and was never quite the same at NC State. And Al Rinaldi was the coach at that time.
Yeah.
But Michael was a tailback that could throw like a quarterback. And now he was skinny. He was a freshman, I guess. And I was looking at the defensive end, and I was hypnotized by the what do you call it?
Yeah, the magic, Michael Vick.
Yeah. Hey, listen, my wife needs me for a sec.
Okay. Yeah, I'll sit here and answer questions, Coach. If anybody's got any questions.
Okay.
Let's do what your wife says, Coach, because we're only on Michael Vick. We got 17 more years to cover. All right, so Coach Cavanaugh is on, and man, I mean, I don't know if I've talked to anybody who is coached with the amount of Hall of Famers that Coach Cav has. I mean, start off playing for Marv, Levy, NFL Hall of Famer, and then Coach Holtz, College Football Hall of Famer, and then went to NC State. Bo Ryan, who Coach said would have been one of the best, died in an airplane crash, and then he went to VMI, and he went to Marshall, and he went to coach with Bobby Ross, who would be in the College Football Hall of Fame, but I think his record fell below 80%. He won a national championship at Georgia Tech. He played for a Super Bowl at San Diego, and then he went to coach for Mac Brown, who's a College Football Hall of Famer and won a national championship at Texas. And then now, we're an hour and 50 minutes into this thing, and Coach has just gotten to going to Virginia Tech, and he's
I'm back.
Okay, good. He started talking about seeing Michael Vick for the first time. All right, Coach, where do you want to pick up?
No, I'm just saying I told.
Yeah, the kid from Highland Springs was a kid who reminded you of him.
Well, Michael reminded me of Darnell, and just a sort of a bigger, faster, stronger thrower, and Darnell now, we were running the veer at NC State, so he'd have been perfect. He was a heck of a runner. But Michael was just, he was just sort of a special guy. He was one of the few athletes at that age. And Tommy Riemann, the coach, Michael liked to lift weights. He thought he liked to impersonate. We had a quarterback at Tech named Druckenmiller.
Yeah, he hand cleaned 315 or 400.
Yeah, who was a weightlifter. That's exactly right.
He got drafted by the 49ers.
I'm sorry?
He got drafted by the 49ers.
Yeah. He was the quarterback. His senior year was my first year there. And Druck, he liked those weights. He's a Fort Union guy. And Michael liked the weights. And so, Michael ended up, when he was drafted, he was in I want to say it was around 210, 212, somewhere in there. I mean, we had a heck of a strength coach, Mike Gentry.
The best.
Mike did a good job in there. But anyhow, he was a young kid when I saw him, and his team at Ferguson didn't have a whole lot of blocking. And he'd run around, and he could make something out of nothing. And humble, quiet, he was a neat guy. And then so I go to Tech, and then that spring when I'm out there, I get film on Mike, and that would have been the spring of 90. Let's see,
97.
No, it was the spring of 96
Spring of 96, he was a freshman.
No, I can't. I think he was. I think I had sophomore tape.
Mm-hmm.
I think because he redshirted 98. His senior.
Al Clark was the quarterback that year, wasn't it?
97 was his senior year in high school. All right. 96 was his junior year in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I had shown film of him in 95 when he was a sophomore at Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. but I was at another school.
Yeah.
But I kept the tape. Well, because I knew there was going to be stuff going on with Curry and North Carolina. So, and then I have tape. I say I kept the tape. I made a copy of it. And then that spring in 96, I showed the film to Coach, and we didn't have to watch too much. And then the rest is sort of history. But Mike was in the shadow of Curry all those 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But Curry, Curry was a good kid. When I'd watch Hampton practice, Hampton had really good teams. He was a good guy. I mean, he'd come over and talk and all that type of stuff. I mean, he was very pleasant to be around. People forget he was a hell of a free safety now.
Oh yeah, he played 20 yards deep and didn't have to move.
Yeah,
it never got to him, did it?
Well, they may not have got to him, but I'll tell you this: he'd lay a lick on you now, and he could play that ball. He was a heck of a. He had great hands. He was a hell of a basketball player.
McDonald's All-American.
So you couldn't recruit him or Mike. I mean, you couldn't recruit them both.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't, and I made the choice. I said, well, that's sort of, I'm going to recruit the Vic kid. And that was that, And so
before Vic,
Curry went. Both. It worked out perfect for everybody. Curry went to Carolina, played quarterback in basketball. We got Mike. Worked out great for us.
Yeah. Before Vic and Curry, there was Aaron Brooks, who Coach Riemann coached, but Allen Iverson coached. Some people say that Allen Iverson is the best quarterback to ever come out of the 757. Did you recruit Allen Iverson, Coach?
I'm sorry?
Did you recruit Allen Iverson when you were at North Carolina?
Yes, but not for quarterback. Allen Iverson, he's a heck of a story now.
Yeah.
I mean, on and off the field. But Iverson now, I mean, he's an interesting guy. Because Coach Kaz and I were good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Allen, he had these skinny little calves. He wasn't very big now, but he could run the wishbone. Kaz ran the wishbone. Right? They didn't throw it much, okay? But this lad could run the wishbone. And then on defense, he didn't play it all the time, but he played it when it was, the game
when it was go time, when it was cutting time.
And he'd lay you out now.
Yeah.
I saw him hit, and the kid played it, was a hell of a linebacker for us at Virginia Tech named Newsom in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Mid-90s. And he was from Hampton, a heck of a player, and good kid and all that. He was a fullback for Hampton. I saw Allen Iverson come up and smack him. I was standing next to Tom O'Brien. He was the offensive line coach for Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
He was down there. Our season had been over. Iverson came down there and he stoned him. And I don't remember.
Is that when he lifted the guy off the ground and slammed him? Yeah, they beat Huguenot in the state championship. He won the state championship in basketball and football, and was the state player of the year his junior year. Then
they won the state in football. He goes down, and with no practice, he hangs 30 something on Kickotan. That was a Saturday they won that title, I guess. And then on Monday he goes to shoot around. On Tuesday he hangs 30 something on Kickotan, who was the defending state basketball champion at that time.
Yeah,
how about that?
Oh, I saw it. I saw it, Coach, at the Arthur Ashe Center. I was a believer, and I've been a fan.
You saw the final, but I'm talking. This was the first game of that season.
I'm pretty sure he could do it all, Coach. He was it. He was that guy.
But Kaz never threw the ball.
Yeah.
We had a linebacker from that team on Carolina, and good, solid, player. And but that old boy now, he wasn't that big, but he could still. And then later on, I saw him in college. He drive down that
court, yeah,
alley, and he dunk, and he had these bodies. He'd get the crap knocked out of him. He had no fear now. That's the biggest imprint I have on him. He had no fear. He'd come down, he'd stone you. So
yeah, no fear. Coach, I'm gonna, yeah, I'm probably gonna get emotional talking about this next guy. He was your great friend, Coach Bill D.
Bill D. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Coach Bill D, Coach, and how special he was.
Oh, he was. D and I got to be good buddies. He was the first time I saw Bill on the practice field. Okay. He has a baseball bat in his hand. and it's during the season, and we were open. It had to be 96 or somewhere, give or take, right around there.
Is that when they had Womack? Was the tailback Antoine Womack?
Yeah, that kid went to Virginia, I believe.
Was it Penn State or Virginia?
It might have been. I can't remember. I don't.
Yeah, it's a lot of years, Coach.
You keep saying that. You're just being nice.
Yeah, but it's a lot of years for me too, Coach. I mean, this is a lot of. Coach Jim McNally said I'm the ultimate name dropper, and he said I know so much useless information, but it's really nothing other than football.
Well, anyhow, Bill's there, and he, because at that time, Nathaniel Adebe is a young player.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a senior yet. And his younger brother wasn't even, on the field yet, Xavier. So, but Bill's got a baseball bat. I said, "What the hell are you gonna do?" He said, "I may just have to hit one of these old boys. They come around. If I catch anybody loafing," he said, he called it, "This is so-and-so week." I'm not so sure they weren't playing Hampton. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a big week.
That was a big game.
Yeah.
But I don't know that for sure. It was either, I tell you, it might have been Bethel, because they were both. It could have been Bethel. I don't think it was Hampton. It was too early in the season. So it was against Cause. Old Coach D, he had that, because he had come across the river. He had coached over at Southampton, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came over, and I could tell right away, this old boy was a PA guy. He was funny. I mean, we knew some of the same people, and we just hit it off. It was funny, and I went down there, and then he and Mike had Mike Smith had a big rivalry.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I know by your laugh, I can tell.
Yeah.
But,
I got Coach Smith coming on here next week, Coach. I don't know if he's let go of it or not.
Coach, people.
Yeah, people say that y'all don't get along.
Yeah, people, Mike, and you make sure you say this. I don't feel that way. Mike had, and when I would go by Hampton, Mike always treated me nice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I had no trouble with Mike, you know. And I can remember
maybe it's because people thought that you sided with Bill D, Coach. You know?
Well, that could be. Now I know Smith busted my chops some about D, you know.
Yeah, but he was your friend and you're a recruiter, so I mean you can't alienate anybody.
No,
it's got players.
Correct. And I had his, you know, I had a little bit more in common with Bill, but no, I mean I got along. I don't know. I do know this, that Mike was tight with Doc McHugh.
Yeah, he's a Virginia guy. He likes Virginia, or he likes Dr. McHugh.
He likes Dr. See,
that's probably what it is.
Because see, I coached at Virginia for a year.
Yeah, I know.
I knew Doc.
What was so great about him, Coach?
Who, Doc?
Doc McHugh.
Well, he took care of everybody. He could do probably, I don't know if it was illegal or I don't know one way or the other, but he'd operate on those kids, any of the in-state kids from anywhere. Didn't matter where you're from. And he had a recovery room in his house. So he could help these guys with the cost.
Man, I love it, Coach. Why can't we get back to the old days, man? I want to see Virginia Tech have it out like this, man. Dr. McHugh. Wow.
Dr. McHugh, he and I it was only a year under Beswick, but he and I got along fine. I used to see him because, you know, I went from Virginia to Maryland, and then Maryland to Carolina, and then Carolina to Tech. We were competing against Virginia all those years.
Mm-hmm.
I coached against Virginia from 1982 to 2012. I coached against Virginia every one of those years.
Man.
So I'd always wave him and that crazy trainer he had. So, no, he was, Doc was fine. And see, I coached for Sonny Randall, who's a Virginia guy. He was a McHugh guy. So I got along fine with McHugh, and McHugh and Mike now were best buddies. So, no,
yeah, I'll have to ask Coach Smith about Dr. McHugh.
Well, no, but please, and also, I'm being very serious now.
Okay.
You make sure you tell him that I never felt anything bad towards Mike. I always came in there to see Mike and all that stuff. And I'm not going to deny I was good friends with Bill either. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
you were. You were great friends with Coach D. I mean,
yes, we hit it off. And in fact, Margaret and Katie, Katie's graduating this year.
Where's she graduating from? From high school?
Yeah, from Phoebus.
Wow.
No, I'm wrong there. Not Phoebus. Kickertown. She went to Kickertown.
Coach, I've done a couple memorial shows, or, you know, I did one I did one on Coach McPhee where Coach McPhee was on there. But I did one for Gary Chilcote, you know, at Verona, and I did one for Coach Woody, you know, his Marine assistant that passed away. But I need to do one for Coach D. I mean, I should get some of his former players on here and tell stories about him.
Yeah, because and said one thing too, during that particular era, you know, I recruited both the DBs. I recruited, you know, Parker, Friday. You know, I had a bunch of guys from that school too.
You had a bunch of them from the 757, Coach. Talk about the 757, Coach. How important is the 757 to Virginia Tech and Virginia's success, or it was when you were there?
Well, I mean, it's pretty. I mean, we had Mike Vick, Marcus Vick, a DB, both the DBs.
Dante Hall.
We had Jimmy Williams, Chris Ellis, James Gale. They're all Bethel guys. Brian Randall from Williamsburg. You know, these are a lot of guys. I mean, we had Darrell Roberts from across the water there.
Daryl Tapp.
We had Tapp.
That was the name that I couldn't remember. Was Daryl Tapp.
There was a receiver named Johnson that was a hell of a player. You know, I mean, we just had a lot of good players. You know, James Brooks was from, I believe, Kickingham. And so we, you know, when you go down the list, there's a lot of good guys. Brendan Hill, who ended up, now Brendan Hill's a unique story. He played for McPhee at not McPhee's, pardon me, Tommy Riemann at with Michael.
Yeah,
and he didn't really play much the first several years there. And shoot, he came in, and his senior year he started and had a hell of a year. And so he played for me.
Yeah. You were the whip and rover, Coach. The whip and rover. Coach.
Yeah, he intercepted a pass for a touchdown against Carolina his senior year.
He's not a very big guy either, I don't think.
Well, Brendan was sort of slight, but he was 200 pounds, you know.
How tall? 6 foot?
Well, yeah, about that. Now, DJ Parker, the free safety, he was sort of slight, you know. You know, another kid from the across the river there that Steiny recruited was the kid Clark, the free safety for the Ravens, who was a free agent, I guess, last year. You know what I'm talking about? The Clark kid. His name's Clark.
I don't know. The Washington brothers there from Nandua, weren't they? They were great.
Yeah,
that was before you.
Yeah, they were there. They were there. I played with the younger one. I mean, not played with. But
yeah, he coached them. You were coaching there.
Their dad coached them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came to Tech, I drove out there. I went over to Chesapeake Bay Bridge to go see them. Just to say hi.
That's two good ones to go see.
Pardon me?
That's two good ones to go see. You get both of them. That's two pretty good offensive linemen. That's two NFL offensive linemen. I mean,
yeah, they were already there when I went out there. Well, the young one wasn't. But the older one was there.
Yeah.
But the dad was he was the coach.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know his dad was the coach.
Yeah.
Like, so when I think of Virginia Tech, I always think about the walk-ons that y'all used to take. And I don't know if it was just y'all were smarter than everybody else and maybe other people didn't offer them and y'all got them there. And I guess it was Coach Gentry. I guess it was the coaching, or Coach, you were so good at, like, talk about what, like you told me the other day, that if you watched a kid for a half, I mean, you got kids getting offered that haven't even played a high school game. And you used to say if you could watch a kid for a half of a game, you could determine whether they could play for the team you were coaching. Talk a little bit about that. Then we'll talk about the walk-ons. But just the in-person.
There's nothing. The film lies a little bit. Now, I know I drove Coach Beamer crazy on this, and probably Coach Brown too. I have a little hang up I always wanted to see him play. Okay.
In person.
Because the caliber of who they're playing against.
Wow.
Counts.
So JV film wouldn't cut it. JV film wouldn't get you an offer from you.
No. But here's another problem I had. And I got my fanny chewed by Coach Beaver, and I'm not embarrassed to admit this. I had a hang-up with the classifications. Okay, over the years, I've always charted the teams I was a part of on scholarship players who didn't make it.
Okay, say this again, Coach, because what you're getting ready to say, it's going to help somebody somewhere. And
what I'm getting at, I don't know if it's going to help if it's a college recruiter, it might help them. But the caliber of football, this is what makes the state of Virginia so good. The caliber of football, and you're still AAA, AA, single A, right?
Pretty much. I mean, it's 6 classifications. It's Division 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it ends up being just 2 3s and 2 2s, and
6 is divided into 2 places, right? Each one's divided into 2, right?
And not anymore, but pretty much it is, Coach. It's still 6 divisions.
All right, 6 divisions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, the smaller schools, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That level of competition is not as good as 5 and 6.
I mean, it's just per capita. It's per capita. It's the number of kids. Yeah, it's the probability that someone's going to be good and they're going to play against other good players. It's a numbers game.
It's numbers.
I mean, it's nothing against the coaches or the areas. It has to do with the numbers.
Well, what I'm saying is kids with the numbers, okay? Coach Beamer, I was partial to the higher groups. I guess 5 and 6.
Well, that also is where you were recruiting because, you were in the higher population.
I didn't have many smaller schools. That's correct. But there were some. Like, and I always use this as an example. And if he heard this, he'd probably be embarrassed. But Brian Randall was from Williamsburg.
Yeah, Bruton High School.
Yep. Now, they were a AA division, maybe 4. I think that's what, I don't know.
Yeah, they were a AA.
Yeah. Well, there were coaches, there were certain games, but he was the best on the field before they even took a snap. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And he was a tremendous player. No matter, he'd have been a tremendous player in the Peninsula District or your district. You know what I'm saying?
He could have played at a Hampton or a Bethel or anywhere, is what you're saying.
He could have played anywhere in the state and been star. Okay? Hell of a basketball player and one of the best leaders I have ever been around.
Wow.
It's the highest compliment I can give somebody. He is a tremendous leader, tremendous human being. All right. Well, there were some other people that came out around the state, not necessarily in Tidewater, around the state at that level and maybe a little lower, okay, who accumulated these tremendous stats, okay? But who they were playing against was not was, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes questionable. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And that's a problem sometimes. When you were asking about, being successful, I believe that's what you're getting at. As far as the recruiting thing, knowing the walk-ons versus scholarships, and it works the other way. There'd be some walk-ons that who played it at the top level. All right, let's say your level. You're Division 6, right?
Yes, sir. Well, we're 5 now, but we were 6 when I was at Meadowbrook.
Okay, all right. Let's use 6 and 5. That's AAA.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, there's some kids at that level who, if they were at Division 3 or 4, would probably be noticed more.
Mm.
But when they go play in these bigger schools, they may be a little smaller, a little slower. All right. So we wouldn't, we did a good job of identifying those guys. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, like Sam Rogers. Like y'all got him as a walk-on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, it's just like if you look at the NFL, most players in America come from South Florida, LA, I mean, in the South, at the higher metropolitan areas where there's more people. They don't have that many NFL players in Montana because, I mean, there's not that many people in Montana.
No, you just gotta, but there are kids, and it's easy when you look at the your Group A league, and there could be a kid out there that is really doing well. No one's, who'd make a great walk. Some people think he'd probably be a scholarship guys, and then, and maybe in our case, we took him as a walk-on, and he got a scholarship the first year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it takes a knack, but I know Coach Beamer, because Coach Beamer was from a smaller school.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
And I was partial to the bigger school. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And so, and I would sometimes I know a couple of times I told kids, look, if you don't want to, if walk-ons, you ought to maybe try to go to Fort Union. And I would help Schumann with some of those guys. Go to Fort Union, prove yourself, and I assure you, you'll get an offer. Fort Union, now I don't know how it is now, but when Schumann was the coach and I was still recruiting, there were more coaches come through Fort Union than any school east of the Mississippi.
Mm. I agree, Coach, and that's
it could have been D3, D2. And obviously D1. Yeah,
I mean, when I see all this reclassifying, oh, hold on, my fault, Coach. I pressed mute. I could, you just couldn't hear me, Coach, but I could hear you, and everybody could hear you watching. But I mean, even these kids reclassify, in high school or 8th grade or whatever. I mean, they could just go to Fork Union and do a post-grad year. But I guess that, that's maybe costs more money, or, it's too hard. But private schools cost.
I mean, he gives scholar. It might. That's a factor. They give a lot of aid, but it's still, it's still a factor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the reclassification bit. I have no really. I can't really answer that or address that, because that wasn't going on when I was around. But I do know this. Now I said this now, and if I upset somebody that's listening to this, I apologize, but I do believe this now, that in the Deep South, and my wife's from the Deep South, she's from Atlanta, in that area, many of the players graduate when they're 18 years old, almost 19.
Mm-hmm.
You with me?
Yeah.
Whereas more if you're Northeast, Maryland on up, many more of them are 17. Okay? Now, to add to that, in the South, the Deep South, I guess I'm going to say Florida, Georgia, you know who I'm
Yeah, I mean, where all the players are. Alabama, Mississippi.
They have spring practice.
Yes.
Now, in the old days, when I was recruiting, they had an extra 15, 20 days a year. So if you got a kid from down in Florida, all right, that young man's probably got close to 75 to 80 more practices than the kid you're getting from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia.
Yeah.
Virginia didn't have, well, when you're evaluating somebody, sometimes you got to take that into consideration. The kids in Florida are more polished than the kids in Jersey and Pennsylvania and up east, but those kids may have more physical talent. It just hasn't been refined.
Yeah, they haven't peaked out. I mean, they haven't maximized their potential.
Right. That's right. Most of our, a lot of times your mistakes come from those situations.
Your mistakes, like Cam Chancellor, Coach. Talk about getting Cam Chancellor to come to Virginia Tech. Did Bill D have anything to do with that?
No, so I didn't have anything. Steinspring recruited Cam.
Oh, he did?
Yes, I did not recruit. Cam is from Norfolk. Cam was a hell of a basketball player. I believe he thought he was going to go to
the NBA, yeah.
On a basketball, not NBA, but on a basketball scholarship.
Yeah.
Well, he goes out for quarterback as a junior, I guess. And he's the best he's the best athlete in the building. So he's going to play where? Quarterback.
Yes.
So, but you talk about raw, and all that stuff. He was pretty raw. And so, but when he showed up and I saw him on the hoof, I told Steiny, we hadn't offered him yet one way or the other, I told Steiny, I said, Steiny, when Coach has that meeting, this weekend, you got my vote right now. And I'm going to go see, I ran the recruiting weekends as recruiting coordinator. So when I saw Cam, first thing I did was tell Coach Beamer.
Who did he look like? I mean, what was your point of reference? I mean, he looks like the Under Armour mannequin. He looks like an NFL guy. Like, who did you think?
He looks like those mannequins that they put the equipment on to show the
yes.
kids. Oh, he's.
I mean, you got him and John Graves in the same class, and Tyrod was. Yeah, Tyrod's a year behind.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they were 08 or 09. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But all I know is, and then see, we didn't redshirt Cam. He played corner. Okay. And to this day, I don't know why we did that. You know what I'm saying? I
know y'all were big into redshirting, Coach. I mean,
yeah, I know, but we didn't redshirt. But then the next year we moved. I got him. He went to boundary. We played out of a 2-deep shell back then, and he played the backside safety, just like he did for Seattle. He's the guy that came down into the box.
Oh, yeah. He came down.
He smoked you. Oh, well, he hurt his neck. I mean, that's why he's out of the league. But now he would flat ass, pardon my language on the radio here, he would flat ass smoke you.
Yeah.
And he could play the ball. Unfortunately, I only had him for a year because then when the kid from Phoebus, DJ Parker, I guess, left, then Cam went to safety, the safety to the field. You know what I'm talking about, Too Deep?
Yeah.
And see, he was Cam, and nice, awesome kid. I cannot say enough things about Cam. He's one of my. Well, I went back to his induction into the Virginia Tech Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were there for 17 years. What stands out about your time at Virginia Tech?
We won a lot of games.
Man, it was great, wasn't it? You won a lot of games.
You know, we had good players. We had very good players. And we coached them up.
You had a great program.
Yeah, we had a great, Coach Beamer was a great head coach. And we had a good staff on offense and defense. I made the comment before about Ralph Friedgen on offense, being a great and knowing all this football. Now Bud was during the game. Bud made great adjustments. Awesome adjustment. He was, a lot of times the game's going on and people will see something, but it's not real. You probably had that happen with some of your assistants. They think they saw something that maybe wasn't quite right.
Yeah. But
they gave you bad information.
How many people gave Bud Foster bad information? Because he already knew, because he already saw it, because his computer's like his brain's like a computer.
He saw it himself. Now, he'd ask questions, don't get me wrong. But he knew, he saw the game and made the adjustments from the boundary is better than anybody. He was to defense what Ralph was to offense. Bud was awesome that way. He'd come in, he knew what we had to change, what we had to do. He knew if somebody, he could, he knew what the other team was trying to do to us. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And he could make the adjustments. It's experience, but it also takes, it's a great skill to have, and he had it. He could make now, one thing we did too, and this emanates from Coach Beamer. We had tough practice. I mean, we practiced hard, we gave great effort in practice. The McDermott kid, who's the head coach of the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, Sean McDermott.
Yeah, he was at William Mary. I remember meeting Sean at LaSalle High School in Philadelphia. And, but he came to spring practice one time. And I don't know, we were walking. I said, "Why are you here?" I said, "You guys, you run quite a program up there with what you're doing at the Eagles,
Yeah. With Jimmy Johnson.
He goes, "I want to see your guys play so hard." And I sort of chuckled. I said, "Well, they better play harder. We're going to put somebody else in their place."
Yeah.
And it came across as smart alecky. And I didn't mean it that way. I was being truthful. We did practice hard.
Y'all's 9-on-7. That was the best.
We got after it. So And that came, I mean, Gentry did it in the weight room. Our trainer rehabbed our kids hard. Our academic people made you go to class. Of course, the last 2 years, when I was taken off the field and I was recruiting coordinator, well, I ended up being the guy to check class. And they used me, the academic people. This isn't very becoming. I got to watch what I say here on radio. But they picked me because when I had my own kids, my own position guys, I used to get after them for making sure you go to class and doing your stuff. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can get. I mean, the academic support system does a great job at Tech, a great job. But sometimes some of these kids will slip through the cracks with class sometimes. And I'd hear them joking about it, you know, in my position meeting. Well, if I heard some, I'd go check them. I'd try to, you know, I'd find out something. And then those last 2 years, because I raised the stink when I was an assistant coach, they would have me go around, and I got reported by one of the profs for bad language in the hallway.
Oh, wow.
One of our players, so I don't mind. One of our players, they didn't do anything to me. One of our players came 20 minutes late to class, this particular class, and he wasn't exactly killing it, you know, in the classroom. Well, I jumped him right there. It was one of the buildings on campus that was all instructional rooms. You know, there were no profs' offices. It was strictly a classroom building, about 4 stories. And I ripped this kid in the hallway. I mean, ripped him. And you could hear the door slamming. You know, the teachers all had their doors open, you know, and then you could see them all closing on I don't know, I was on the 2nd floor, maybe 1st floor, I can't remember. And the doors were all closing. And then somebody called over to the athletic director and said, you had this old guy with white hair cussing in the hallway. But my point being, we really coached them hard, you know, and that type of thing. Not stupidly now. You know, I mean, we didn't do anything, you know, as far as the running and, you know, we didn't do punishment running and stuff like that. I mean, they had some punishments, but they were always supervised and that type of thing. But we didn't have any trouble with that. But our kids were the best barometer. They got on each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's when you know you got it going. And we had older kids because we did, like you said, we redshirted almost everybody. And so we have a little bit of an older kid. And then as we got more skilled kids, there were a couple of kids corner, you know, defense, certain positions, tailback, corner. You know, when you're playing corner, all you have to do is count to 1, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not like it's a lot of brain work. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's certain coverages you're disguising and stuff. I'm simplifying it, but
Yeah.
Anybody who's listening, you know what I'm talking about. Tailback, the biggest problem you had with young tailbacks is not running the ball. That they already have that gift. It's pass protection, like I talked about before. So, you know.
Here's a couple things that I remember you telling me over the years. The first one was we lost to Petersburg when I was an assistant, and you were there to watch John Graves, and I think you were there to watch the kid Kendall Langford that ended up going to Hampton. Yeah, but you told me we lost, and you said it's a long season. So that was one thing you told me. You said it's a long season, and I guess that you just realized that from years. And then another one is you got to coach guys that
it's a long season that you. I mean, I said it to you like that's only one game and
yeah.
it's a long.
Yes, sir. That's what you meant. It's a long season. Like the season's not over with, but you told me it's a long season. And then you can comment on these, Coach. I don't even know if you remember most of the stuff, but you said you got to coach guys that you don't like. Sometimes you got to coach guys that you don't like, and I don't know if you use this term.
Right. The term is you have
turds.
Guys that you're gonna.
I mean, and I know some guys are turds. You don't want turds.
I mean, you were on radio there, lad.
Yeah, I mean, we're on YouTube. I mean, I guess it's.
There are personalities that don't jive with yours.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell. When freshmen come in after that, midway through the first 4, 5, 6 games, you can tell what makes guys tick and what doesn't. And there's some guys that are a pain in the neck. There's some guys that they believe you, but they're not quite sure they trust you. You got to earn that. And I got no problem. I had a saying: I was going to be firm, fair, and friendly. Right? And I pretty much did all right that way. Now I would get on. That doesn't mean I would make them do right now. You know what I mean? I know that I annoyed some of the players. I'd make them pull up their pants. They all wore those pants down. And then I'd say, I'd make them every now and then. Don't be slouching in your seat like that. Stand up,
Yeah.
And then I also did this, not as much as because some kids were too nervous. But I'd make kids go to the board and draw the defense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just show me, because sometimes, they're back there like that little bobblehead you have in your car, and the head jumps up and down.
Yeah.
They're yelling you to death. So now I did ask questions to my kids, and I also had a saying: keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
Kid. And see, part of the thing with my position, I was somewhat transient. I got the slow linebacker, or I got the, sometimes not slow, but the linebacker that didn't take to linebacking inside as opposed to outside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's probably the most important position in football. I mean, because you're playing inside of number 2. I mean, you're like the walk player.
You're making the thing you have to do is you have to make my guys had to make a lot of adjustments, calls. Like I had a kid, a really good kid, and he'd start the game, but he rarely finished the game because in the fourth quarter, I sometimes had some trust issues with him. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
When the game was getting down to nut cutting time, and it was, things were close. I didn't want this one guy had a penchant for making a mistake at a critical time, and I wasn't going to allow that. So I always had tried to play 6 guys, the 4 starters, and then one guy at each spot to back up. Not 4 starters, 2 starters, and then one guy to back up each.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because that guy's got to cover and he's got to play in on the run. I mean, I know they say everybody's supposed to do that, but I mean, that position in particular, I mean, what do you look for when you recruit that position, Coach? I mean, that's what everybody's looking for, that nickel.
That was the problem. We didn't really recruit that position. We were going to take the free safety that wasn't quite as fast. You know what I'm saying? They had skills, but they weren't quite as.
Yeah, they weren't good enough where you were going to say, hey, man, that guy, he's the free safety. Or, hey, man, that guy's the corner. Or, hey, man, that's an inside backer. So
the secondary coach, unless we specifically in recruiting said, you're playing here, you're playing there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, nobody wants to be the walk backer. Everybody wants to be an inside or wants to be free safety.
Yeah. But one of our best defensive backs, outside linebackers, was a guy named Corey Bird. He was a receiver for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, he wasn't going to get much playing time. I said, I'll take him. And he was a hell of a player for us.
Yeah, I remember him.
So, I was very proud of how many one-year guys I had. They came from another position and started their senior year.
And they
I had a whole slew of those guys.
So that you pretty much coached the field backer and the boundary safety.
No, when you say no, boundary safety, yes. But you're in it too deep, okay?
So the nickel, you had the field nickel and the boundary safety.
Yes, most people call that a nickel.
Yeah, then you coached the nickel to the field and then the boundary safety. Those are your two positions.
But body type, when I coached, that outside nickel was not a DB. He was more of a linebacker type.
Mm-hmm. He had to fit on the run.
A light in the ass, strong safety. You with me?
Yeah, like a monster, like people used to play with the 4-3 monster.
Yeah.
Coach, we've been on here almost.
You have to play number 2, man for man.
Yeah, no, it's the hard. That's the hardest position in football to me. Like, you got to cover, you got to fit it on the run. I mean,
but we rarely, unless you knew our scheme, we rarely. The best cover guy had to be our boundary corner.
Yeah,
because we gave him no help.
Yeah, and that's where everybody throws the ball in college.
A lot. Yeah, a lot. And then we'd roll to, we'd also, don't get me wrong, we played a lot of two deep, man. We had a coverage we call robber, 2 deep robber, not 3 deep robber, 2 deep robber, and the boundary safety on the hash.
Mm-hmm.
He'd come down to the in between. He'd rob the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Anything between the hash. The 2 linebackers would be on the hash. The 2 corners would level, and he'd rob anything in between. Like if you ran a square in, he'd rob it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Chancellor was in there, I almost thought at times he was a little hesitant to get the pick. He let the old boy have it, and then he dismantled the kid.
Yeah, he did. He dismantled quite a few.
We get some great hits in that coverage now.
Coach, we almost been on here for 3 hours. So, like,
no, it's not 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes and 20 minutes, right?
No, we've been on here for 2 hours and 48 minutes, Coach.
Is that right?
Yes. Is there anything that we missed?
We started at 1 o'clock. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Is there anything that we missed? Is there any story that you want documented that you want to tell that we missed?
I'm going to tell you one story, and it's a fun story. It makes fun of me, but it involves Coach Beamer.
Okay.
And we're playing a home game, and I cannot remember who, what, or where, so to speak. I know it was a home game. All right. So it's early second quarter, somewhere in there. And there's a call on offense. There's a call. I can't remember the exact call. I guess I don't remember. Coach Beamer, what he's doing, he's protesting. He's bitching at the officials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know what it was. It was a TV timeout. Okay. And it was the offense. The offense was on the field. And he's bitching. Okay. And now Coach Beams, he could wear out those officials on the sideline. So he goes out. He's at the numbers now. Okay. Coach Beams is at the numbers. And he's wearing this official out. So I go to Bud. Okay. Because Bud doesn't have to be making any calls. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I go to Bud. Hey, Bud, somebody better go out there and grab the boss. He's going to get us 15. Well, Bud goes something to the effect, not me. I ain't going out there and grabbing them, you know. And so then Charlie's on the phone too. Charlie Wiles, D-line.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlie can hear. So I go, hey, Charlie. And Charlie didn't even let me finish. Not me, something like that. I'm paraphrasing what they said, but they let me know they wanted no part of it.
Yes, sir.
And then, I said, well, he's going to get us 15. And I repeat that. So I'd said it twice now. And like the good Lord above speaking down, Coach Beamer, in his wrath, had hit the button or the knob on the side. So I thought he had the offensive coaches on the phones. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
His phone he could switch back and forth. We couldn't. Okay. So I don't realize he's listening to me say this to Bud and Charlie. And he goes, hey, Cav, you worry about the I'm not going to repeat the words. You repeat and then you let me worry about the officials. And I go, yes, sir. All right. And that's it. So then when the game's over, okay, we win the game. And so when the game's over, I don't know if you know how tech works, but we have that locker room in the stadium for halftime.
Mm-hmm.
We'll dress in the castle, but at halftime and right after the game, we go into that locker room in the field house, in the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And, the recruits come in. And then when the game's over, 3 or 4, 6, I don't know, go to the press room. And then the rest walk back in front of the home stands. They can yell at their parents or girlfriends or whatever. Some of the recruits are right there. I'm usually right there with the recruits, directing them to their coaches and players, people they know. That's a real important time for me. But before I come down out of the press box, like I said, we won the game. So I come down, and so when the team is coming off the field, the game's ended. They get, everybody's sort of milling around for maybe 2-3 minutes, and then coach, he's got to get to the press conference, so he wants to say his last word. So he goes to the locker room door, and the players are, they're coming through, and good game, and he's shaking some hands and doing what he does. And then I come up and I shake it. I said, good game, Coach. I said, who was that a-hole up in the press box giving you crap about the officials? He looks at me. He doesn't know what to do. Then he starts laughing. But so that but he was ticked, But that he's a good dude. I mean, that shows you what kind of coach he is. Some of these guys would have, they wouldn't want to talk to me for a week. But I did, and thank God he didn't get 15. So. But that's about it. I guess that's about it.
Yeah, Coach. We could sit here and talk the rest of the day.
Yes, we could. We could. But I hope I didn't offend anybody or say anything. Keep me posted on that.
Coach, you're fine. You're fine, Coach.
All right.
Yeah, you're fine. So I'm gonna press end right here, Coach, and we'll stay on and talk for a second, okay?
Okay. So all right, I'll wait for you to
okay.
stay on.
I'm gonna press end.